Mr. Query, floor is yours, sir. Welcome. Yeah. Former Vice Mayor, member of the council in Silverton. Maybe we should attend your hearing on the tentative tax budget.
I'd be happy to have you there. Thank you, Councilmember Mann. Happy New Year, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful holiday season. Director of Government Affairs, obviously, for the Cincinnati Area Board of Realtors, and you all know our longstanding position on this issue, and that is, I'll just simply restate as far as this particular agenda item is to reject item number 1 on the agenda and support item number 2, the version B. That would keep the property tax rollback in place. There's a number of things that we could discuss right now, but I'll just speak broadly to it. The property tax rollback policy has been around since 1999 or 2000. And as a former council member once described it a number of years ago, the policy began to, the quote was, drive certain inefficiencies in the budgeting process within the city of Cincinnati. And that's a very loaded statement, but it's very eloquently stated by that person who is no longer in government and has gone on to certainly greater and more exciting things, and that would be former council member Jeff Birdie. Mayor Cranley also has been a longtime supporter of the rollback policy, and as many of you know, one of the previous votes a couple of years ago, which would have been a microscopic property tax increase, he vetoed that measure because he has long stood on the belief that property tax rates are too high for the residents, and it places an unfair burden specifically on the people who have placed a stake and said, I'm going to be a city of Cincinnati resident, I'm going to buy property, and I'm going to live here. And so just broadly speaking, that's what we would just ask you to keep in mind as you consider this policy and take your votes. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Questions? Mr. Landsman?
I just want to thank Mr. Creary for a couple of things. I mean, one, his steadfast commitment to, keeping property taxes lower, especially at a time when at least it has seemed as if that's where folks go to generate revenue, in many cases for really important causes. And I think you've done a nice job of distinguishing when it is critical and in the best interest of the city and when it's not. So I appreciate that.
If I could real quick.
Yes, sir.
And thank you very much, Councilmember Landsman. And I just would be remiss if I didn't remind you all that the capital operating budget, the millage there, with the increase that occurred, there were some very important issues that were part of that vote that our organization contemplated and listened and met with the leaders of the city, including the fire union, the police union. We understood the need for those two organizations and what those matters were, as well as the Western Hills Viaduct. And we know that that's very, very important to the citizens of the city and to this region. And so we feel, again, that the property owners have kind of stepped up in those regards, and we would ask you to keep that in mind as well.
We do appreciate
Mr. Chair.
that thoughtful support last year. Mr. Sittenfeld?
I was actually, Mr. Query beat me to it. I was going to highlight the exact same thing. No, because look, I mean, having the government affairs leader, and you do a great job for the Cincinnati Area Board of Realtors, come to City Hall and say, don't raise property taxes. That's a somewhat predictable thing, but to his credit, and more importantly, I mean, to the credit of the organization you represent, when the capital side property taxes, it was an open policy consideration in order to invest in public safety, to invest in a vital corridor like the Western Hills Viaduct. And you and your colleagues did not come down here with pitchforks and blowtorches. And honestly, I think that's needs to be commended. And I take the point too that you all don't want, and Mr. Landsman sort of said this, in some ways, I mean, choosing to live in Cincinnati, no one is forced to live here. And the people who choose to live here, they should almost get the best treatment, not the worst treatment, which means not treating them like ATMs when, you know, budget deficits do emerge. So I did want to, you beat me to it, and Mr. Mann echoed it, but to commend the position you all took last year, because I'm sure it wasn't an easy one for the organization, but there are 50,000 people who cross the Western Hills Viaduct that say, thank you, city, for doing your part. We're waiting on the feds and others to do their part, as well as our police and fire. So deserved of commendation.
So unless there's further discussion,
Mr. Chair.
what I'm going to do is propose we vote first on number 2, which is the B version, which is the cap, and then go to number 1. Ms. Murray?
Thank you, yes. So, well, I'm not an official member of budget. I wanted to be here because this is such an important matter, and I'll be voting on this in council. And so I had my office put together kind of our tax breakdown, because right now we're just dealing with the city's portion of it, which is very small, maybe 13% of the whole tax budget. But what we need to do is look at what our citizens are having to pay, because we need to look at it as a whole. So we went through and from 2016 and looked at what someone of a $100,000 house was paying, and then what it has gone up to by 2020. And this is without the county commissioners already saying that they're going to increase their property tax. So this is without that. This is without any other taxes that come in. So someone in 2016 was paying approximately $2,100 a year for a $100,000 house. At 2020, without some of these other increases, they'll be paying $2,555. So they have had a almost 24% increase since 2016 in property taxes. So I'm just saying, residents of Cincinnati, they have a $100,000 house, their property tax has gone up more than $400. If you have a $200,000 house, we're aiming towards $800 increase without any of this in here, without anything from Hamilton County, which they've already said they're raising property taxes. So, you know, when we look at the big picture of managing the tax situation for all the residents in the city of Cincinnati, I don't see how we can look at this and say to people that have bought in the city of Cincinnati, in the last couple of years, your property taxes have gone up 24% and we're going to raise it higher. I don't know how we can say that, because when you look at the whole package, it's very disheartening, and I think our property taxes, as was said before, are way too high, and we cannot keep increasing them. We're going to lose people in the city. And when you look at, you know, elderly, people that are on a fixed income, even people that aren't on a fixed income, adding $400 a year, and this impacts renters and everyone, because everyone, it goes down. If we raise the property taxes, it goes to everyone. And having to shell out another $400, $500, $600 a year on property taxes, you know, you're making choices. Some people are making choices between medicine, between groceries, you know, between anything, and having to pay this property tax. So I just, you know, don't see how we can, in good consciousness, increase property tax.
Well, just to be clear, the question before us, the difference between A and B is $29 a year for a $100,000 home. Mr. Landsman?
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a really important debate, probably one of the most important debates that we have, and Councilwoman Murray raises, I think, hugely important points about the property tax situation in the city of Cincinnati, and it is, as I mentioned earlier, a big burden for families, a big burden for seniors. By comparison, because this is going to be a debate that we have throughout the year, and you know, I think it's really good that we have, you know, opposing views, or at least we have a healthy, you know, back and forth on this, which I really appreciate. If you just, on the point 1, this is the income tax, I'll make this, you know, my final comment, but it is, you know, for each point 1, right, we're at 2.1, for each point 1, just so people understand the difference here, you're talking about the average family makes around $45,000 to $50,000 a year in the city of Cincinnati. So point 1 represents about 96 cents a week of an increase. And to me, I would love us, and I think Mr. Mann makes a very good point that it has to be very thoughtful. We got to bring a lot of people together. We got to do this right. But ultimately, I would love to see us do it in a way that doesn't just put us on the right path financially so that we can deliver services with excellence and meet all of our responsibilities to our citizens, but also puts us in a position to provide some meaningful tax relief for property owners.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Murray?
So to your point, and I agree, every time we have a levy that comes up, every time we look at property taxes, it's always brought up that it's only $29 a year, it's only $39 a year, it's a cup of coffee once a month. So it's really not that impactful on people. But then all of a sudden, we're here at $430 that our property tax has gone up. That's a lot of coffee. That's a lot for people to be able to handle. You know, when we talk about 96 cents a week, that's what we always hear. We don't raise it in increments of $500 because it would never happen. But we keep raising it in these small increments of $30. Hey, it's no problem, it's just 30, it's another 30. Well, here we are at plus $400 in property tax increases in the past couple of years.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Denard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that I'm going to go out on a limb and say I don't think the appetite is there for any of us to raise the taxes this go around because we do recognize that taxes are way too high. So I'm pretty sure in my discussions I just had with Zeno and Bigham that, you know, we're probably going to go with the one, I think it's version B or version A?
B.
B, okay, because I don't know. So I just don't want to give people the impression that this council is going to vote for a property tax increase when no vote has actually been taken yet. But just by surveying my colleagues just roughly, I think that we're probably not going to raise taxes on people just because they are too high. We recognize that people who own homes, we can't treat them as ATMs, and we recognize the taxes are too high. To that point, though, we do have to think about the income tax discussion as a part of that, because we can't continue to say we want these services and services delivered well, but we don't want to pay anything for them. So something has to give. While I don't think that something has to be property taxes, we do have to put everything out on the table.
All right, what I propose to do is go ahead and have a vote on number 2, which I think is version B, which caps the revenues, and we probably won't need a vote on number 1, which is version A then. So roll call on passage of number 2.
Denard,
Yes.
Landsman,
Yes.
Pastor, Sittenfeld,
Yes.
Smitherman,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Mann.
No.
Item passes.
It passes. Without objection, item 1 will be put on for indefinite postponement. And that concludes today's business. Just to be clear, on the